Living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood often sounds like a dream come true. A quiet life, friendly neighbors, and well-kept lawns. But when you live under the rule of a homeowners association, HOA, that dream can quickly turn into a frustrating nightmare. And if your HOA has a Karen in charge, well, you might as well buckle up, because life is about to get interesting. My name is Jack, and for the past 5 years, I had enjoyed living in what I thought was a quiet, welcoming community. My house sat on a sunny corner lot with a perfectly manicured lawn and a small garden that my wife loved to tend to. Life was simple, quiet, and exactly how I wanted it, until Karen decided I was her next target. It all started with my mailbox. Now, I'll admit, my mailbox wasn't fancy. It was a sturdy black metal box mounted on a wooden post. Functional, reliable, nothing special. It had been there since the house was built, and it did its job just fine. But apparently, Karen didn't see it that way. Karen wasn't just any HOA member. She was the HOA president, a title she wore like a badge of honor. She wasn't happy unless she was enforcing some obscure rule or handing out violation notices like they were candy. From the height of your grass to the color of your front door, if you didn't meet her standards, you were on her radar. And now I was squarely in her crosshairs. It started with small hints, snide comments during HOA meetings, or when she passed by during her daily power walk. "Your mailbox looks a little dated, doesn't it, Jack?" she said one day, her lips curling into that fake smile she was famous for. I brushed it off, figuring she'd move on to her next victim soon enough. I was wrong. One crisp Monday morning, I stepped outside with a cup of coffee, ready to collect the mail. But when I reached the curb, my mailbox was gone. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I even walked up and down the street, wondering if it had been knocked over or moved as a prank. But there was no sign of it. No broken post, no scattered mail. It had vanished without a trace. My first instinct was to check my security cameras. I had a doorbell camera that covered most of my front yard. I scrolled through the footage from the night before, and that's when I saw her. At 2:13 a.m., Karen appeared, marching down the street like a woman on a mission. Dressed in her signature pink jogging suit, she stopped in front of my house, glanced around suspiciously, and, with a smug look, yanked my mailbox right out of the ground. I couldn't believe it. Who does that? I mean, it's just a mailbox. I stormed over to her house, ready to demand an explanation. Her lawn was perfectly trimmed, of course, and 2 garden gnomes stood like silent sentinels by the front door. I rang the bell, trying to keep my anger in check. When the door swung open, there she stood, smiling sweetly, like she hadn't just committed a federal crime. "Oh, Jack," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Is everything okay?" "You know exactly why I'm here, Karen," I snapped. "My mailbox is missing." "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Her eyes widened in mock surprise. "Your mailbox? You know, I did notice it was a little outdated. I'm sure someone just wanted to help keep our community looking neat and uniform. You should thank them, really." I clenched my jaw. "That mailbox was fine, Karen. You had no right to touch it." "Oh dear," she sighed theatrically, patting my arm as if I were a child who didn't understand the rules. "I'm just doing what's best for the neighborhood. Maybe you should consider installing one that fits our guidelines." And with that, she shut the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, stunned by her sheer audacity. But as I walked back home, my anger turned into something else: determination. If Karen thought she could push me around, she had another thing coming. I wasn't just going to replace my mailbox, I was going to install one that she couldn't touch. Something indestructible. Something that would drive her insane. I spent the rest of the day researching the most ridiculous, over-the-top mailboxes money could buy. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to make a statement, and I knew exactly how to do it. The plan takes shape. After hours of searching online, I found the perfect solution: a reinforced, tamper-proof, custom steel mailbox. It was designed to withstand sledgehammers, car collisions, and even explosives. If Karen thought she could mess with my mailbox again, she was in for a rude awakening. I didn't stop there. Oh no, I was all in. I custom-ordered the mailbox with a sleek modern design that clashed perfectly with Karen's beige cookie-cutter aesthetic. I even had it painted neon blue, just bright enough to catch her eye every time she walked past. But the real kicker, I installed it in a solid concrete base. This thing wasn't just a mailbox, it was a monument. When the delivery truck arrived, I could already feel Karen's nosy eyes watching from behind her curtains. I made sure to take my time, carefully pouring and setting the concrete. By the time I was finished, my new mailbox stood tall and proud, a symbol of my defiance. And then the waiting game began. Karen strikes back. It didn't take long. Less than 48 hours later, I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice outside. I peeked through the blinds, just in time to see her standing in front of my masterpiece, hands on her hips, her face twisted in disbelief. I stepped outside, pretending to check the mail. "Morning, Karen," I called out cheerfully. "Like the new mailbox?" She turned, her smile as fake as ever. "It's certainly unique, Jack, but I'm afraid it doesn't meet the HOA's guidelines." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "I checked the rules. Nowhere does it say I can't install a reinforced mailbox." Her eye twitched. A small, delicious victory. "Well," she huffed, "I'll have to bring it up with the board." "Go right ahead," I said, grinning. I'd love to hear their thoughts. I could tell she was seething, but for once I had the upper hand. The final showdown days turned into weeks, and Karen tried everything. She sent letters. She called emergency HOA meetings. She even had the audacity to report me to the county inspector. But my mailbox, it stayed right where it was. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found an anonymous note taped to my door. "You win this time, Jack." Victory had never felt so sweet. And the best part, every time I walk out to check the mail, I get to admire my indestructible monument to petty revenge. And Karen, she has to see it every single day. For a while, life seemed peaceful, or as peaceful as it could be with Karen living next door. My indestructible mailbox stood tall and proud, a daily reminder that I wasn't someone she could push around. Every time I grabbed the mail, I couldn't help but smile, knowing it drove her crazy. But if I thought Karen would give up that easily, I was dead wrong. Karen wasn't the kind of person to accept defeat gracefully. No, she was the queen of petty revenge, and she was just getting started. The morning after I received that mysterious note, things took a strange turn. It began subtly, almost like she wanted me to think I was imagining things. First, my trash bins mysteriously disappeared on garbage day. I spent half an hour searching the street before finally finding them tucked behind the community clubhouse. Coincidence? I didn't think so. A few days later, I woke up to find my sprinklers running non-stop. Someone had tampered with the timer. And then there was the most infuriating part. Passive-aggressive letters stuffed into my mailbox. No signature, no return address. Just little notes with messages like, "Your lawn is 0.5 inches too high. Your mailbox doesn't fit the community aesthetic." Rule number 47 clearly states that all exterior decor must align with the HOA guidelines. Of course, I knew exactly who was behind these letters. I tried to brush it off. After all, I had already won the mailbox battle, but deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished, and I was right. She was just warming up. The fake violation storm. One day, as I returned from work, I found a bright orange notice taped to my door. My stomach twisted into a knot as I read the bold letters. Notice of HOA violation, failure to comply. Apparently, according to Karen's latest complaint, my mailbox color was too distracting and disruptive to the neighborhood harmony. I chuckled at the sheer pettiness, but when I flipped the notice over, I saw something that made my blood boil, a $500 fine. I wasn't about to let her win, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I lawyered up. I consulted a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. After reviewing the HOA bylaws, he confirmed what I already suspected. Karen didn't have a legal leg to stand on. The mailbox complied with all official regulations, and there was no rule about color choice. Armed with this information, I filed an official dispute with the HOA board, demanding that the fine be revoked. Karen was furious. At the next HOA meeting, she did everything she could to paint me as a troublemaker. "She's obsessed," I whispered to my wife as we watched Karen deliver her rant. Her voice trembled with fake concern. "If we let this go, it sets a dangerous precedent. What if everyone starts installing unapproved mailboxes? Where will it end? The board members, many of whom had suffered under Karen's reign, weren't buying it. After I presented my evidence, the HOA board ruled in my favor. Not only was the fine revoked, but they also issued a formal warning to Karen, reminding her that personal grudges had no place in HOA enforcement. Victory again. But if Karen had been mad before, now she was unhinged. The spy drone incident. I didn't think things could get any crazier until the drone showed up. One sunny afternoon, I was lounging by the pool with my wife, enjoying the warm breeze. Out of nowhere, a loud buzzing sound broke the peace. I looked up and saw a drone hovering above us, its camera pointed directly at our backyard. "What the hell?" I muttered, shielding my eyes from the sun. My wife sat up. Is she spying on us? I grabbed my phone and checked the camera feed from our security system. Sure enough, the drone had been buzzing around my property for days, mostly when I was outside. And guess where it always seemed to return? Karen's backyard. I wasn't about to let her violate our privacy, so I decided to fight back, but not in the way she expected. First, I documented everything. I saved the security footage and filed a formal complaint with the local police. Using drone footage to invade someone's privacy is illegal, and I wasn't about to let it slide. Then, I set up a little surprise, sending the drone crashing down. The next time the drone appeared, I was ready. I had invested in a signal jammer, a completely legal device that interferes with a drone's ability to stay connected to its controller. The drone hovered above my pool again, its camera whirring as it tried to capture whatever it could. I grinned, pressed the button on the jammer, and within seconds, the drone wobbled violently. Karen must have been frantically trying to regain control, but it was no use. With a loud buzz, the drone spun out of the air and smashed directly into the side of her house, knocking over one of her precious garden gnomes. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. Moments later, I saw her storming into her yard, arms flailing as she inspected the wreckage. She spotted me standing by the fence, smiling sweetly. "Problem, Karen," I called out. Her face turned beet red. You did this," she sputtered. "Me?" I raised my hands innocently. "I was just minding my own business, enjoying my legal mailbox. Maybe if your drone hadn't been trespassing, it wouldn't have crashed." Her jaw clenched so hard, I thought she might shatter a tooth. Without another word, she spun around and stomped back inside. The fallout, the best part. My complaint to the police didn't just get her in trouble, it triggered a full HOA investigation. Turns out, Karen had been using HOA funds to buy the drone, justifying it as a security measure. When the board found out, they were livid. Within a week, Karen was stripped of her HOA presidency. She tried to play the victim, claiming she was only doing it to protect the neighborhood, but no one was buying it. The vote to remove her was unanimous, and me? I became a local legend. Neighbors I'd never even spoken to before congratulated me on standing up to HOA tyranny. Even better, Karen was now powerless. She could glare at my mailbox all she wanted, but there was nothing she could do. And every time I checked my mail, I'd smile to myself, knowing that I'd not only won the battle, I'd won the war. For a while, life in the neighborhood finally seemed normal, or at least as normal as it could be with Karen still living next door. After her humiliating removal as HOA president, she kept a low profile. No more drones, no more fake violation notices, just the occasional death glare from her porch whenever I passed by. Honestly, I thought she had learned her lesson. I was wrong. Karen wasn't just licking her wounds, she was planning her comeback, and when it came, it was bigger, bolder, and more ridiculous than anything she'd pulled before. The great mailbox heist. It all started on a rainy Friday evening. I had just finished dinner when I heard a loud clanking noise from outside. At first I thought it was just the wind, but the sound didn't stop. Curious, I pulled on a jacket and stepped outside. What I saw made my jaw drop. Two men, dressed in matching black hoodies, were yanking on my indestructible mailbox, trying to rip it out of the ground. One of them grunted, "This thing is solid as a rock." I couldn't believe it. Karen had sent people to steal my mailbox. "Hey," I shouted, stepping onto the driveway. The two men froze. For a split second, they tried to play innocent, but the guilty look on their faces gave it away. Without another word, they dropped their tools and bolted down the street, disappearing into the night. I immediately checked my security cameras, and of course, the footage showed Karen standing across the street, arms crossed, supervising the entire operation. She had finally lost it. I wasn't about to let her get away with it. Time to fight back again. By now, I knew exactly how to handle Karen's nonsense. First, I filed a police report for attempted theft and property damage. With the clear video evidence, the officers took the complaint seriously. They promised to follow up and pay Karen a friendly visit. But I wasn't stopping there. I decided it was time to turn the tables again. This time, I wanted to give Karen a taste of her own medicine in a way she would never forget. I upgraded my mailbox to something even more ridiculous, a custom steel fortress painted in shiny gold with the words, "Touch this and you'll regret it." To make things even better, I installed a hidden camera directly inside the mailbox. If Karen or anyone else tried anything again, I'd have crystal clear evidence. And because I knew she loved her HOA rules, I made sure to get official approval from the new HOA board before making any changes. This time, Karen couldn't claim a single violation. Karen's meltdown. It didn't take long for Karen to react. The day after I installed my new golden mailbox, I caught her pacing in front of her house, glaring at it like it had personally offended her. I could almost see the smoke coming out of her ears. By that afternoon, she was back to her old tricks, filing new complaints with the HOA board. Except this time, she had no power. Every ridiculous grievance she sent was promptly denied. I thought she'd give up, but instead, she decided to escalate things one last time. The fake lawsuit threat. A few weeks later, I found an official-looking envelope taped to my door. Inside was a letter from an alleged law firm claiming that my mailbox was causing emotional distress and demanding that I remove it immediately or face a lawsuit. I couldn't help but laugh. It was the most Karen move imaginable. But there was just one problem. I recognized the letterhead. It belonged to a fake legal template website anyone could download from the internet. Karen hadn't even bothered to hide her tracks properly. I knew this was my chance to end things for good. Exposing Karen's lies, I called my lawyer, and we drafted a cease and desist letter outlining the harassment and legal violations Karen had been piling up. Along with it, I attached video evidence of her theft attempt, copies of fake violation notices she had sent, proof that the lawyer letter was completely fake. Then, I took it one step further. I sent a copy of everything to every member of the HOA board and even several of our neighbors who had also suffered under Karen's reign. When Karen received the letter, she lost it. She showed up at my door, ranting and raving about how I was ruining the neighborhood. I calmly reminded her that harassment and fraud weren't exactly part of community spirit. And then I delivered the final blow. I informed her that if she ever tried anything again, I wouldn't hesitate to take her to civil court for harassment and defamation. Her face turned white as a sheet. Without another word, she stormed back to her house and slammed the door. The sweet taste of victory. After that day, Karen seemed to disappear. She stopped showing up to HOA meetings, and I rarely saw her outside. Word spread quickly that she had been exposed for her antics, and no one in the neighborhood wanted anything to do with her. A few months later, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. Within weeks, she packed up her things and moved away. As for me, I still have my golden mailbox, standing proudly as a monument to outlasting the ultimate HOA Karen. Every time I check the mail, I smile knowing that I won the war and made sure she could never bother me or anyone else again. And the best part, I never had to touch a single HOA rulebook. For a while after Karen put her house up for sale, the neighborhood felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. No more random HOA violations, no passive-aggressive letters, and certainly no drones buzzing around my backyard. It felt like the end of an era, and frankly, I thought I had seen the last of her. But I underestimated Karen's pettiness. Just when I thought I had won the battle, she had one last trick up her sleeve. And this time, it wasn't just annoying, it was personal. The mystery buyer. One Saturday morning, I noticed a fancy black SUV parked outside Karen's house. A well-dressed couple was standing in the driveway, chatting with a real estate agent. It looked like someone was finally buying the place. I'll admit, I felt a tiny bit relieved. With Karen moving out, I could finally relax and enjoy my home without constant harassment, or so I thought. A few days later, as I was watering my lawn, I saw Karen standing at the edge of my driveway. She had a smug smile plastered across her face, the kind that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "I just wanted to say goodbye," she said sweetly, which was already suspicious. "Oh, and you're going to love the new neighbors." Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked away. I didn't think much of it until they moved in. Meet the new nightmare. A week later, a giant moving truck rolled up in front of the house. I expected a quiet family, or maybe a couple who would keep to themselves. What I got instead was Karen 2.0, except somehow even worse. The new owners were Karen's distant relatives, a loud, nosy couple named Mitch and Debbie, and from the moment they arrived, they made it very clear that they were here to pick up where Karen left off. Within days, they were already causing problems. Noise, complaints. They blasted 80s rock music at full volume every Saturday morning. Property boundaries. Mitch decided my lawn was too green and started spraying his weeds onto my grass. Mailbox. Antics. Remember my indestructible golden mailbox? They started leaving notes in it, saying it was an eyesore and against the community's aesthetic. It was like Karen had never left, except now there were two of them. The battle escalates. At first, I tried to ignore them. I figured they would get bored and move on, but these two seemed determined to make my life miserable. Things reached a boiling point one afternoon when I caught Mitch in my driveway with a sledgehammer, eyeing my mailbox like he was about to go all Hulk smash on it. I stormed outside. "What do you think you're doing?" Mitch didn't even look guilty. "Just thought I'd help you with this ugly thing," he said, tapping the mailbox with his hammer. "That's private property and you're trespassing," I snapped. He laughed, and sauntered back to his house like it was no big deal. That's when I realized I needed to outsmart them, just like I had outsmarted Karen. The master plan. If there's one thing I learned from dealing with Karen, it's that the best way to handle a neighborhood bully is to beat them at their own game. Step 1. I installed more security cameras, covering every angle of my property. If they even breathed near my mailbox again, I'd have proof. Step 2. I dug up every obscure HOA rule I could find, especially the ones they were breaking. Loud noises after 10 p.m., violation. Trespassing on private property, violation. Unapproved yard decorations, double violation. Step 3. I made friends with the new HOA president, a no-nonsense retired lawyer who loved enforcing the rules. With his help, I filed a formal complaint against Mitch and Debbie for harassment and property damage, and then I sat back and waited. Checkmate. It didn't take long for things to come crashing down on them. Within a month, the HOAs slapped Mitch and Debbie with fines for every violation they committed. And when Mitch tried to fight back, I handed over my camera footage of him threatening my mailbox. The HOA board was not amused, and neither was their lawyer. Then came the final straw. Mitch decided to host an illegal block party without HOA approval. Hundreds of people showed up, blocking driveways and causing chaos. When the police were called, the HOA used it as grounds to issue a formal warning that any further violations could lead to legal action. Suddenly, their smug attitudes disappeared. Within 3 months, their house went up for sale, faster than Karen's ever did. Peace, at last. When their moving truck finally pulled away, I felt a wave of relief. After months of dealing with Karen's legacy of chaos, the neighborhood was finally quiet again. My golden mailbox still stood proudly, a symbol of everything I had survived. As I sat on my porch, watching the sunset, I couldn't help but smile. Karen lost. Mitch and Debbie lost. And I had won again. And the best part, I knew that no matter who moved in next, I was ready. Because once you've defeated the ultimate HOA Karen, no neighbor will ever stand a chance.